The mastermind behind Benghazi has been arrested, TrumpRx launches, and the Dow is doing better than ever. All that and more today on The Nathan Hale Show. Well, folks, today is February 6th, 2026, 2626. It is our first show of February. It is the month of love here for all those who celebrate. By the way, just on a side note, I'm a big fan of Valentine's Day. I don't care. I don't care if you think it's just a holiday to sell cards. I happen to be in a relationship, and I like that there is Valentine's Day, and I'm a big fan of it. So, keep your opinions to yourself. Don't come at me. I like Valentine's Day. I don't care if it's all to sell cards and chocolates. I like it. I like it. I happen to like cards and chocolate, so perfect day for it. Anyways, we have so much to talk about today. Lots of interesting stories I was not expecting to have happened this week that we're going to be going over. So before we get into that, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're live streaming on X, all through those platforms. Follow me on all of them. This show comes out every single Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And let's go and get right into it. So, our very first story comes from the Benghazi attacks. Now, Benghazi happened quite a while ago, back in 2012. This happened under the Obama administration, and it was a massive disaster. But apparently, we have just now finally arrested the mastermind behind Benghazi. So, mastermind behind Benghazi attack arrested and in U.S. custody as Bondi takes dig at Hillary Clinton. One of the architects of the deadly 2012 attack on the U.S. mission in Benghazi, Libya, has been arrested and will be prosecuted on arson, murder, attempted murder, and terrorism charges, Justice Department officials announced on Friday. Zubayr Al-Bakoush landed at Andrews Air Force Base at 3 a.m. this morning. He is in our custody. He was greeted by FBI Director Kash Patel and D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. Attorney General Pam Bondi told reporters at DOJ headquarters. Al-Bakoush, the third Islamic extremist arrested in the connection with the Benghazi assault, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, Bondi wrote. Well, Pirro said her team, quote, will not stop hunting down other attackers who remain at large. Patel declined to state whether Al-Bakoush was apprehended before he was flown to the U.S., citing the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. In case you're interested, here is a photo of the guy. The two other terrorists, including attack leader Armand Abu Khalidi, aka Ahmed Bukala. Don't come at me, folks. I don't know how to pronounce these names. I'm a white guy from the Midwest. I can't pronounce these names. Were previously arrested in Libya. Just take my word for it. If you want to know the names, go read the article. It's linked in the description down below. They're bad people. That's what you gotta understand. Quote, the Benghazi saga was a painful one for Americans. It has stayed with all of us, and let me be very clear. There are more of them out there, the U.S. Attorney said, sharing how she and Patel had kept in touch with family members of the 4 Americans killed in the attack. Quote, time will not stop us from going after those predators, no matter how long it takes, in order to fulfill our obligation to those families who suffered horrific pain at the hands of these violent terrorists. Pirro added. I love Jeanine Pirro, guys. I'm a big fan of Jeanine Pirro. I've loved her since she was Judge Jeanine on Fox, and I'm so glad she's part of the administration. I understand that she's heading up the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. I don't really know what she has to do with terrorism, but whatever. I'm happy to hear from her. It's great. So, an indictment unsealed Friday afternoon charged Al-Bakoush, a member of Al-Qaeda, linked Asar al-Shira, with 8 counts of conspiracy to provide and actually providing material support to terrorists, including himself, and using those resources to murder U.S. officials, injure others, and set fire to the buildings that house them in Libya. Al-Bakoush and 19 co-conspirators also intended to plunder property from the mission, including documents, maps, and computers containing sensitive information, the 13-page document said. The team of 20 intended to use the records to, quote, identify and coordinate additional attacks against United States citizens, installations, and interests in Libya, according to the November 2025 filing in D.C. federal court. The September 11, 2012 assault on the U.S. mission in Libya's second largest city took the lives of U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, U.S. Department official Sean Smith, and CIA contractors Glenn Dorothy and Tyrone Woods. The terrorists stormed the complex and set fire to it while launching mortars at a nearby CIA facility as part of a coordinated assault, officials said. The indictment described how Al-Bakoush and the others violently breached the mission's gate around 9:45 p.m. and torched its buildings, including a villa housing Smith, Stevens, and Steve Wickland, a diplomatic security agent who survived the attack. Smith and Stevens died while trapped inside the compound. The terrorists retreated an hour and a half later and began firing on the complex with handguns, AK-47 assault rifles, and rocket-propelled grenades before re-entering the mission around 11:45 p.m. Earlier on the morning of September 12th, they also fired on the CIA annex with mortars, killing Dorothy and Woods, causing serious bodily injury to David Urban, the State Department Assistant Regional Officer, and Mark Geist, another security officer at the annex. Officials in the Obama administration suggested in the immediate aftermath that the attack was a spontaneous offshoot of protests over an anti-Muslim video rocketing around the internet. A select House committee investigation found 5 years later that Obama officials failed to deploy military assets to Libya despite intelligence warnings of growing danger to American interests. No diplomatic security agents in Benghazi attributed the attack to a video or protest, the report also noted, even as the White House used those exact words to explain the bloodshed. Here's an image of a part of the compound that got blown up. That looks like one of the better halves of it, honestly. The UN ambassador, then UN ambassador Susan Rice. So it always goes back to Susan Rice, guys. For example, had said on September 16, 2012, quote, "What sparked the recent violence was the airing on the internet of a very hateful, very offensive video that has offended many people around the world." How many times can we say offensive in a sentence, Susan Rice? Okay, Senator Ron Johnson pressed former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton over the failures that led to the attack during the 2013 hearing leading to the future Democratic presidential nominee to snap, quote, "What difference at this point does it make?" Don't you love that we avoided her as president? Quote, Hillary Clinton famously once said about Benghazi, quote, "What difference at this point does it make?" Well, it makes a difference to Donald Trump. It makes a difference to those families, Bondi said on Friday. And 14 years later, it makes a difference to law enforcement. Let this case serve as a reminder, she added. If you commit a crime against the American people anywhere in the world, President Trump's Justice Department will find you. It might not happen overnight, but it will happen. You can run, but you cannot hide. Patel said he worked on the Benghazi case as a young prosecutor and said the arrest of Al-Bakoush has brought the tragic episode full circle. Quote, "When an act of terrorism of this magnitude strikes at the heart of our nation, we go to work," the FBI boss told reporters. Quote, "I was at the airfield with U.S. Attorney Pirro earlier this morning when we did the formal foreign transfer of custody of Bakoush into U.S. custody to face prosecution," he said, "and her office and the Department of Justice are going to execute justice for the fallen." Pirro added, quote, "President Trump will make sure that the cavalry comes for Americans, no matter where they are in this world." What a line, by the way. I mean, do you feel safer as an American with Donald Trump as president or Joe Biden as president? Let's be honest. Who do you feel safer under? I feel way safer under the administration as people on saying the president will make sure the cavalry comes for Americans no matter where they are in this world. You can run, but you can't hide from American justice. Quote, an American ambassador, elite military personnel, and a State Department employee were all violently murdered, she said. The American cavalry never came. For 13 hours, the victims waited for help that never came. Mustafa Al-Aliyam, another suspect in the attack, was captured by U.S. Special Forces in October 2017. He was later, also under Donald Trump, by the way, he was later convicted of federal terrorism charges and sentenced in January 2020 to 19 years and 8 months in prison. Should have been longer. I'm sorry. I know I say on this channel all the time that I respect the rule of law. Whatever the judges rule, I stand by it. If you're a terrorist, lock them up for the rest of their life. I'm not even ashamed to say it. Kalia was nabbed in June 2014. He was initially sentenced to June 2018, 22 years in prison, a penalty described as unreasonably low by a federal appeals panel. Okay, you know what? I take back what I said. Even the federal appeals panel agrees it should have been longer. So I stand by my statement. In September 2024, during the Biden administration, Kalia was resentenced to 28 years in federal prison on federal terrorism charges and other offenses. All right. That's a little bit better, right? So, if you're not familiar at all with Benghazi, I highly, highly encourage you to go and watch the movie, 13 Hours? Was that how? Yeah, 13 Hours. I highly suggest you go and watch the movie 13 Hours. It is a solid flick about this whole disaster, and it shows what these guys were going through on the inside of this compound in Benghazi while they were having literal bombs launched at them. It's absolutely insane. And this is Hillary Clinton's responsibility. She was Secretary of State when this happened. This was going on under her watch. So I think that it's a complete disaster under the Obama administration. Obama will always be remembered for this disaster in Benghazi because so many more people could have died. I mean, the fact that only 3 people died from this disaster, I mean, it is an absolute miracle that it wasn't more of them. Because when you actually look at what happened, and I highly suggest you go and watch the movie, it shows this really well. I mean, they were basically in this tiny little compound. There was only about 10 of these guys there, I think. There wasn't really that many of them. But they were held up in this little compound in Benghazi. And they were surrounded on all sides by terrorists with machine guns and missiles. And they were bombing the crap out of this government facility, which wasn't even like a real compound. It was a house that was in Libya. It wasn't even like really well secured, right? So it's just crazy that more people didn't die. So God bless these people who gave their lives to get intelligence from the United States and were willing to be over there in the line of fire for this. It's unfortunate that they lost their lives, but also God bless these other men who were there, who defended these compounds from absolute obliteration and saved even more lives that could have potentially been lost if things had gotten worse. So it's just so crazy. It's just so crazy. But I'm happy to see that we've kind of concluded this whole story now. Benghazi, it seems like, almost, more than 10 years later. So, all right, let's go and move on to our next story of today. A little bit of a lighter note. So TrumpRx has launched. It's official. It's a thing. So Trump unveils drug savings website, TrumpRx. So the website, TrumpRx.gov, offers most favorable nation prices on prescription drugs. Quote, this launch represents the largest reduction in the prescription drug prices in history by many, many times. It's not even close, President Trump said on Thursday. You can see numbers that you are not going to believe. Americans have long been paying the highest drug prices anywhere in the world, while other countries have often paid pennies on the dollar for the exact same drugs. He added, quote, we were essentially subsidizing the entire world and subsidizing hundreds of billions of dollars every year. Trump said the US has 4% of the world's population, consumes only 13% of all prescription drugs, but supplies 75% of Big Pharma's revenue. Quote, the American people were effectively subsidizing endorsement drugs for the entire world, and it's not going to happen any longer, he said. We ended it. Joe Gerbia, U.S. Chief Design Officer and Airbnb co-founder, showed off the website where patients can obtain coupons to use at pharmacies. The website initially reserves over 40 of the most popular expensive medications, but Trump said more will be added soon. Customers cannot use health insurance to buy the discounted drugs, which are accessible only through direct purchases. However, I will say, once you see how cheap some of these drugs have gotten, you're not going to need insurance for it anymore. So here's one of the graphics that was up on the website. So this is for a drug. I'm not going to claim to know anything about it, but the US price was basically $1,500. Canada, for the same exact drug, was paying $355 per dose of it, I assume. It says per pen, so I'm assuming this is like an injectable drug of some kind, but I'm assuming that each pen is like a dose, right? So they're paying $355 per pen, where the US is paying $1,500. So the US was paying about 4 times as much than Canada was for this exact same drug. Now, under Trump's plan, he has gotten that exact same drug price down to $252, down from $1,500. So that's now even cheaper than it is in Canada, which is it's great. It's crazy. It's so great to see this. So here's an example of some of the other drugs. So, going down the top of the list, we have a drug, $1,350 per month. Now under TrumpRx, $150 a month. You might have been paying $150 a month under insurance. You might have been paying, I don't know how much people are paying under insurance. I would honestly be curious to know how much people were paying under insurance for these drugs and how much they're paying for them now. If you know anything about this, let me know. But I'm assuming that you were either paying the exact same price or more if you had insurance that covered these medications. Some of these you might not have even been able to get covered under your insurance. So you might have been paying, this absolute metric ton of money for these drugs. So here's Ozempic. So Ozempic, Americans were paying about $1,000 per dose for Ozempic. Now they're only going to pay $200 a dose. We are going to be a nation of skinny people now that the weight loss drug prices have gone down. A nation of skinny people. We're going to be so snatched as a nation, right? Not that I necessarily condone you going using weight loss drugs, but if that's your jam, that's your jam. Either way, they're going to be cheaper for you now, regardless of how you feel about it. So I think it's absolutely great. I saw an article that was alleging that prices for drugs in Switzerland were going to be more money now because of Trump's drug plans. I frankly don't care what the prices in other countries of drugs are, as long as Americans are getting the best price for them. I care about America, and I should hope that Canada cares about Canada, and Switzerland cares about Switzerland, and every single country in the world is lobbying these drug companies to give them drugs at the best prices possible. What I need to have explained to me is why exactly are we able to get drugs now in America? Why exactly are we able to get Ozempic in America for $200 when previously it was over $1,000, right? How much money does it really cost these drug companies to produce a dose of Ozempic? I'm sure it doesn't cost them $200 per dose. I'm sure it's significantly cheaper than that because they're making a ton of money off these drugs, right? So how much is it really costing these drug companies to produce some of these medications that we're paying significantly more for? I'd honestly be curious to know about that. Like, how much of a profit are they making on these drugs? Because as far as I'm concerned, right, they have it in their margins to be able to offer drugs for lower prices. There's no reason for you to be offering these drugs at astronomical prices. And by the way, I'm happy that Americans can't use insurance on these things, especially if they are cheaper, that they use insurance already. I want more and more Americans to be able to just afford the care they need without having to go through an insurance provider to get that care that they want, right? I want Americans to be the sole proprietor of who decides their health care, how they get their health care needs, right? I want them to decide that, right? I want to be in charge of what I spend my money on, and I just want prices across the board to be as cheap as possible so I can decide where I want to put my money at. I don't need to go through insurance to get these things done, right? I would prefer to just pay for it myself if that's possible. So, anyways, this is a great thing. I'm happy to see drug prices coming down. This is going to help millions and millions of Americans, and hopefully gets us a few more votes in November. We'll see. So we got to talk about the SAVE Act now. So the SAVE Act is an interesting piece of legislation. So the Hill put out an article. It says that Elon Musk says the SAVE Act requiring voter ID to vote must, quote, must be done or democracy is dead. So Tesla CEO and former White House advisor Elon Musk on Wednesday weighed in on legislation that would require ID and proof of citizenship to register to vote, warning that democracy could be at risk if the legislation isn't enacted. Quote, "We must be done or it must be done or democracy is dead," Musk said on the social media platform X, which he owns. Congressional Republicans, including House Speaker Mike Johnson, have voiced support for the SAVE Act, although Johnson opposed an attempt by Representative Anna Pauline Luna to include the SAVE Act in a massive funding package to reopen the government from a partial government shutdown. Quote, "We all want the SAVE Act, but we look at the reality of the numbers here," Johnson said Monday. "We have passed the SAVE Act twice in the House. We'll pass it again. We'll do that. But this is a funding package right now, and I don't think we need to be playing games with government funding." Perfectly reasonable point, right? Like, let's keep the government open. Let's keep the money flowing to where it needs to go to, and then we can talk about other legislation later. I'm not a fan of omnibus bills. And I'm not a fan of it regardless of whose party is in power. So I think we should take one thing at a time. Totally agree with the speaker on this one. All right. So Minority Leader Chuck Schumer chimed in, and he compared the SAVE Act to legal segregation in the South during the 20th century. Oh my golly. You know, just when you thought the libs could not get woke enough, they come out and they say something like this. So Chuck Schumer says, quote, "The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0. It would disenfranchise millions of Americans. Every single Senate Democrat will vote against any bill that contains it," Schumer wrote on X. "Speaker Johnson should tell SAVE Act Republicans to stand down, or else this shutdown will be on them." The SAVE Act differs from legislation introduced this week dubbed the Make Elections Great Again Act, a bill led by House Administration Committee Chair Brian Steele. The bill would require voter ID, but also reductions on how states administer and maintain their elections. The bill would also stipulate that mail-in ballots must be received by the time polls close on Election Day to be counted. Damn straight they should. This with exceptions for members of the military serving overseas. All right. You know, we've talked about voter ID quite a bit on this channel. I'm a huge fan of voter ID. And by the way, the American people are huge fans of voter ID as well. This is like an 80-20 issue in America. Like, we saw this up in Wisconsin, where Wisconsin voted to get voter ID into their state, I believe, you know, in this past and whatever the most recent election they had was. And I think 80% of the state voted in favor of it, right? This is like, this is an issue that Americans wildly agree on. It's just these far left Democrats who have anything against it, because here's the thing. They love having illegals voting in elections. They love having voter fraud because it all skews towards them, right? It all skews towards them. They love having all the illegals in the country. They love having all these undocumented people in the country because it skews the number of representatives they get in the census, right? They get that. And we also have quite a few illegals who are voting in elections. And to those folks out there who say, oh, you know, in any given election in a jurisdiction, for example, maybe there's only 3 illegals who voted, right? Maybe there's only 5 illegals who voted. I would argue it's 5 more than it should have been. Only American citizens should be allowed to vote in our elections. We have strict laws around this. If we do not enforce those laws, then what have we become? I completely agree with Elon Musk. We've lost democracy. If we can just ship in voters, we can skew whatever results we want, right? So I'm a total fan of the SAVE Act. This whole notion that mail-in voting should be somehow a universal thing, or it should just be accessible to every American, I think is also completely preposterous. I'm anti mail-in voting. I think that you should go and vote in person, unless you have some circumstance that really prevents you from going and doing that thing, right? If you're a member of the military, totally understand for that, but that's a different issue than just regular everyday Americans in America voting. Those are people who are actually overseas who are serving our country, protecting us every day, protecting the very elections that we're having. Of course, we should let them vote by a mail-in ballot, right? If you are going to be away out of your state, during the time of the election, I kind of agree with it then. If you're someone like me who's a college student who goes to college quite far away from where elections are happening at, I kind of get it too, right? And that's not to say that as of right now, you should not go out and vote using a mail-in ballot. I know I'm going to kind of contradict myself here, but until you cannot use mail-in ballots anymore, you should use them and take advantage of it if that's how you get a vote in. Every single Republican needs to get a vote in for their Republican candidates in any means possible. Go in and vote in person ideally, but if you can't do that, make sure you get a ballot in one way or another. Because here's the thing, we can't make changes to make things better if we can't get the right people in the power. And every single vote matters, now more than ever, right? So I'm pro getting rid of mail-in ballots for the vast majority of Americans, except for very specific cases. But until that actually happens, we need to take advantage of the ballots that we have available to us and get our votes in, because God knows the left is doing it, right? This is a huge thing on the left. They love using the mail-in ballots. We have to use them too, as long as they're available to us, right? We have to use every advantage that we can get. We can't just give the win over to the left and let them just use everything, right? Getting a ballot in, you have to do it one way or another, right? This would happen in 2024, where Republicans said, you need to get a ballot in one way or another. Use a mail-in ballot. Use an vote absentee. Vote early. Go in and vote. As long as you get a ballot in somehow, this is all that matters. You need to get a ballot in with your name on it, signed with Republican candidates to get counted, right? So, the last thing I'll say on this point is, I'm kind of crazy when it comes to voter ID. I actually think we should have a whole separate IDing system for voter ID. I think you should have a whole separate document that has your voting credentials on it. I think that states have gotten too funky with allowing illegals to get IDs, to get documentation that could be used to go and vote with. I don't think normal IDs and driver's licenses are secure anymore. I think that we should have every single voting age American who wants to go and vote in an election go and get an ID, right? Go and get it from the DMV. Gotta show up and get one. It's not that hard to go into a DMV. It's not that hard to get the right documents together to get a voter ID, right? Show up, same process would be get a driver's license. I just want a different identification that clearly says this is an ID. You've been verified to vote in the United States, right? Brand new system, brand new people, right? No rolling things over from any other database. We only want legalized Americans, legal citizens of America voting in our elections. So I'm a little crazy. I understand that's never going to happen, but I'm happy. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy with this. I think we can go farther though, right? And that's what I love about Republicans, where Republicans are happy with, a little bit of change, but they always want a little bit more. They always want to go that next step. So the last point I'll make on this is Chuck Schumer suggesting that this is somehow modern day segregation or Jim Crow era segregation to want Americans to have to show an ID to go and vote. How stupid do you actually think Americans are? Like, how disgraceful must it be to be a black voter and vote for Democrats when Democrats think that you are literally so stupid that you cannot get an ID or a driver's license or some identification to show that you can vote in America. How awful, how degrading must that be, right? I feel I rationalize with you all. I hear it as a gay dude, right? The left is constantly making generalizations about, the gay community being attacked. Oh my gosh, right? I constantly hear it. And it's degrading to hear. It's degrading to hear that the left thinks so little of people like me, right? I can't imagine what it's like for black voters out there to hear that this is what the left thinks of you. The left thinks that you are so dumb, that you are so stupid, that you cannot get a driver's license to go out and vote, that they are alleging that this is like Jim Crow 2.0 segregation here in America because you are so stupid you can't go and get an ID to go and vote, right? By the way, where are all the Democrats when you need to have an ID to buy alcohol? Where are all the Democrats when you need to have when you have to have a passport to go to a foreign country? Where are all the Democrats at when you need to have a driver's license to operate a car? You need more identification to operate a motor vehicle in the United States than you do to go out and vote. What sort of country are we living in, right? So, happy to see the SAVE Act coming in, but my God, I don't know what it is with Democrats and always picking to go with the 20 on the 80-20 issues. The Democrats are always constantly picking the 20% of people who are the absolute crazy people on the 80-20 issues on any given topic, right? They picked the 20 on all the transgender stuff. They picked the 20 on the voter ID stuff. They picked the 20 on immigration. They picked the 20 on gun rights, right? They're always picking the 20 on all of these issues that we as Americans can pretty much agree on, right? It's just insane. It's just absolutely insane. All right. So I'm going to move on. So speaking of immigration, a semi-truck driver held on ICE detainer after 4 killed in head-on crash. Oh boy, here we go. The driver of a semi-truck at the center of a multi-vehicle crash that left 4 dead in Indiana is in U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement custody after a detainer was placed on him. Indiana State Police said the fatal crash happened Tuesday around 4 p.m. in the area of State Road 67, the County Road 550 East in Jay County, where the truck collided with a van. The Department of Homeland Security told Fox News that the driver, Bekhzan Beshkalev, is a... oh boy. Kyrgyzstani. Guys, once again, I'm a white dude from the Midwest. I don't know how to pronounce these names. I've never even heard of this country before. Kyrgyzstani national. Can't even pronounce it, guys. Can't even pronounce the name of this country this man is from, who entered the U.S. via the Biden-era CBP One cell phone app on December 19, 2024 at the Nogales, Arizona port of entry, and he was released into the U.S. via parole by the Biden administration. Oh, great. Thanks, Kamala. Borders are. Thanks, Kamala. Thanks, Kamala. Brishhekev, 30, was reportedly driving on SR 67 in Indiana when he didn't stop for another slower semi-truck swerving into oncoming traffic and crashed head-on to a van, killing 4 people, several of whom were reportedly Amish. The poor Amish people, guys. The poor Amish. I feel so bad for them, right? I love the Amish people so much. They're great people. They make beautiful furniture. The poor Amish. Quote, ICE issued immigration detainer against Brishhekev, with the Jay County Jail on February 4th, and because the state of Indiana cooperates with ICE, we were able to take him into custody on the morning of February 5th. DHS said in a statement, quote, he will remain in ICE custody pending immigration proceedings. Quote, not only was Beskalhan Bishkasiv released into our country by the Biden administration using the CBP One app, but he was also given a commercial driver's license by Governor Shapiro's Pennsylvania. How did he get a commercial driver's license app as an illegal in the United States? Governor Shapiro, you have blood on your hands for allowing this to happen. These decisions have had deadly consequences and led to the death of 4 innocent people in Indiana on Tuesday, added DHS Assistant Secretary Teresa McLaughlin in a statement. Quote, it is incredibly dangerous for illegal aliens who often don't know our traffic laws or even English to be operating semi-trucks on Americans' roads. These sanctuary governors must stop giving illegal aliens commercial driver's license before another American gets killed. These governors need to stop giving illegals any sort of driver's license before other people get killed. This could have just as easily happened with a car, right? This is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. Here's a picture of this individual, this guy, who perpetrated this crash. I can't anymore, guys. It's so illogical that we have people in this country who think it's okay to let people and to allow this to happen. And you will hear people who will say, oh, well, you know, car crashes happen all the time, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? This one could have actually been prevented. I think we should try to prevent as many car crashes as possible, right? But a good way of preventing them is not allowing illegals into our country who are getting into car crashes, right? If this guy was not allowed to come into our country, right, which he should not have been allowed to do, this car crash would not have happened. We would not even be reading the story right now. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And it's not to say that it's not as equally as bad when other car crashes happen. Any car crash anywhere happens is bad. However, it's even worse when the perpetrator of the crash wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place, right? Wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place. So it's just crazy. This is why we want strong border policies. It's as simple as that, right? It's as simple as that. Had this guy been a citizen, it's possible this crash wouldn't have happened. Had this guy, been a full-fledged American who knew how to speak English, who was perfectly qualified to be driving a truck, because I'd argue he was not perfectly qualified to be driving a truck. If he was here illegally, maybe this crash wouldn't have happened. That's all we want. That's all we want. We just want to know who these people are. We want to know who these people are. It's as simple as that. It's just crazy. All right. Let's talk about the economy a little bit. So the Dow Jones, it's doing great, guys. So the Dow Jones hits 50,000 for the first time. The Dow Jones Industrial Average topped 50,000 points for the first time on Friday, as investors rallied in response to a rout in tech stocks earlier in the week. The closely watched index rose above 50,000 for the first time after 2 p.m. during Friday's trading session, after rising more than 1,000 points on the day, which represents a gain of more than 2.2%. President Donald Trump celebrated the news in a Truth Social post on Friday afternoon. Quote, the Dow Jones Industrial Average just hit 50,000 for the first time in history. Congratulations, America. Trump wrote. Chip stocks surged on expectations they would benefit from increased spending on artificial intelligence data centers by Amazon and Google, parent companies Alphabet. So it was a little bit of AI. So the S&P 500 index, which is viewed as more broadly representative of the U.S. market, was up 1.76% at 6,917 points. 9 of the 11 S&P 500 sector indexes rose, led by the Information Technology Index gain of more than 3.7% and nearly 2.7% gain by the index for industrials. The S&P was about 1% below its record high that was set last week, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ was down about 4% from its record high close last October. So let's recap. NASDAQ record high in October, S&P 500 record high last week, and now Dow Jones record high today. I say our economy is doing pretty damn good, if I do say so myself, right? You know, we were all told that the Trump tariffs were going to send us into a recession. We were going to be sent into a recession, right? And let's be real for a second, folks. The cost of goods and the quality of the economy are two separate things. The economy can be doing really good and grocery prices can still be high. But I'm happy to see that our economy is good. That's one half of the equation. Now what we have to do is get some inflation down and get prices to be a little bit more stabilized out so Americans start affording things again, right? It's insane how much things have gotten into the grocery stores, guys. It's kind of crazy. And, you know, I would always like things to be cheaper, but I honestly don't think it's going to happen. And hopefully we can just kind of balance out here for a while and keep going. But this is great. This is great. Our economy is doing good. Our stocks are doing great. Investment in America is going well. What more could you want? All right. Our last story today before we tune out. We have to talk about the big game and the halftime performer at the big game. We can't say that the name of the big game or else we'll get copyright flagged because only the people who put together the big game can say the actual name of the big game. So we'll be referring to as the big game, right? How many times can I say big game in this show? So big game halftime performer Bad Bunny wins Grammy, says, quote, "Before I say thanks to God, I'm going to say ice out." Oh my gosh. On Sunday night, Bad Bunny opened his acceptance speech at the Grammy Awards by saying, "Before I say thanks to God, I'm going to say ice out," drawing cheers from the audience after winning Best Musical Urbana Album for Debí Tirar Más Fotos. We're not savage. We're not animals. We're not aliens. We're humans. And we are Americans, he continued. He says that as he wins a Grammy for an award for an album titled in a foreign language. He continued, Bad Bunny, whose legal name is Benito Acacio, made the remarks as dozens of artists use the Grammys to criticize immigration operations across the country and call for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to leave major cities. His comments come a week before he is scheduled to perform at the Big Game halftime show at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. Bad Bunny's section as a Super Bowl halftime performer has drawn backlash due to his previous refusal to perform in the United States as a form of protest against ICE, as well as his plan to wear a dress and honor queer icons during the performance. Oh my god. Stuff like this makes me homophobic, guys. Hearing stuff like this, we're going to honor queer icons. Yeah, it's going to go over really well with the people who watch football. Because despite the absurdity of the National Football League, the NFL, being so far left, their audience is still primarily massive conservatives, right? I actually would go a step further and say, I don't think I've ever met an actual genuine football fan who's like a big football fan who was like a huge lib. It's crazy that football still gets the attention that it does with being so libby when the audience is so conservative, right? Anyways, that's going to go over really well with the audience who watches football. I'll go a step further and say the vast majority of the people who watch football are also straight. Yeah, honoring queer icons is going to go over really well with a whole bunch of straight conservatives. Just saying. Anyways, so during his speech, oh my gosh, these people are so exhausting, guys. I can't take it anymore. This is why I have to go MIA from the internet for a few days on the weekends. It's gotten so extreme. So during his speech, Bad Bunny added, quote, "Hate gets more powerful with more hate. The only thing that is more powerful than hate is love. He said, quote, "We need to be different. If we fight, we have to do it with love. We don't hate them. We love our country and we love our family. And that's the way to do it," he continued, "with love." You know, I think that loving America is wanting America to have strong borders and loving the people who are citizens of this country, not people who cut the line to get into this country. Because America is not their America, it's our America. And yes, that is a joke. If you got the reference, clap for that. Forgive me if I don't think that I want to be lectured, or that I don't think that someone named Bad Bunny is a reliable source to be lecturing Americans about what they should and should not believe about current events happening inside of America. Forgive me. Forgive me. So, anyways, this is going to go over really well on Sunday. I'm sure it is. I will not be watching any part of the big game on Sunday, nor will I be watching Bad Bunny. But, you know, I think that this speaks to a bigger issue of what has truly happened to the halftime show. We used to have real awesome, genuine performers. I mean, starting in 1993, we had Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson, I feel like, really defined the modern Super Bowl halftime show into being, you know, the biggest musical performers putting on this massive show, a huge, basically a miniature concert during a football game. So 1993, you had Michael Jackson. Just a few years later, in 1996, you had Diana Ross, right, another legend. A few years after that, in 2001, you had, or excuse me, in 2000, I'm skipping people. I mean, let's just see if there was anyone else on here before I move on. I mean, yeah. 1999, you had Stevie Wonder. Next year, in 2000, stacked, you had Phil Collins and Christina Aguilera, by the way. Year after that, you had Aerosmith and NSYNC, right? Legendary bands of the 90s and early 2000s. And you might look at these bands and say, you know, oh, and by the way, same year we also had Britney Spears, right? You might say now, you know, oh, that music is so old. I'm not a fan of that music. It sucked. What you gotta remember, guys, is this was a huge. These were big bands back then, right? These were big bands that were very, very popular, that had actual good music, in my opinion, right? Aerosmith, solid band, right? Solid band. I would argue that Aerosmith is a better band to have at a football halftime show than someone named Bad Bunny. Let's be so for real. All right. 2002. My favorite Super Bowl halftime, or my favorite big game halftime show. Can't say the other one. My favorite halftime show ever is the 2002 halftime show with U2, where they did a tribute to the victims of 9/11. Bono is up on stage, guys. He's up on stage. He's got his leather jacket on. He starts singing "Where the Streets Have No Name," and he opens up his leather jacket. Inside the jacket is an American flag. How desperately I want that exact jacket. Well, not that exact. I'd take a replica of it, but I would love to have a leather jacket that has a fake American flag stitched on the inside of it, just like Bono had at his halftime show. I still think it's by far the best one. I'm just a big U2 fan as it is, honestly, but that really does it for me. I think it's so cool. As he's singing, they have the names of the people who died in 9/11 scrolling on a banner behind him as it's just a great show. It's a great performance. Go and watch it if you haven't seen it. Next year, you had Shania Twain and Sting. Year after that, you had Janet Jackson, Kid Rock, Justin Timberlake, Jessica Simpson. Year after that, you had Paul McCartney. Then we're in 2006 now. You had the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones, right? 2000, just absolutely, between 2000 and if you're basically between 2000 and 2009, you had an absolute stacked cast of performers. So where were we? We had Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones in 06. 07, you have Prince. By the way, I was born in 2003. I had Shania Twain, the first Super Bowl I was alive for, I had Janet Jackson for it. So, and Kid Rock and Justin Timberlake. Pretty stacked performance. All right. Prince was 2007. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was 2008. You had Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band in 2009. Last time we had a good Super Bowl show, to be honest with you guys. Then in 2010, we had The Who. 2012, we had Madonna. I'm surprised it took until 2012 to get Madonna to do a halftime show. Kind of crazy. 2013, we had Beyonce. 2015, we had Katy Perry. 2016, we had Coldplay. Love Coldplay. Big fan of theirs. 2017, we had Gaga. We love Lady Gaga here on this show. Big fan of Lady Gaga. Her show was fantastic. 2018, we had Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake made a return because he was there, He was there in, I just saw his name. We just mentioned it. He was there in 2004. So Justin Timberlake makes his return in 2018. Maroon 5 after that. Maroon 5 is a solid band for going and doing a halftime show. I think he took off a few too many pieces of clothing for that show, but that's just me. And then after that, we kind of lost it. 2020, we had Shakira and Jennifer Lopez shaking their butts with their children up on stage with them. Which, by the way, how crazy is that? So Bad Bunny was also there, by the way, just to show you the degradation of the show. Long show too, by the way. Then we had The Weeknd. I think The Weeknd is not a great band. Not a fan at all. Year after that, we had Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar. I don't care for any of them. Year after that, we had Rihanna. Year after that, we had Usher. Year after that, we had Kendrick Lamar. That was last year. And this year, we have Bad Bunny. Why anyone would want to be named Bad Bunny is beyond me. I'm just still stuck on that. So, anyways, folks, go watch some of the older halftime shows. If you're watching the big game this year, put on a different one. Please don't watch Bad Bunny. It's not worth your time. God help the people in the audience of the halftime show who are going to have to listen to this crap, right? God help them, because you know there's going to be a protest. You know he's going to say F ICE. You know he's going to say ICE out sometime during a show. You know he's going to rip his shirt off, and he's going to have, defund ICE tattooed across his hairy chest or something like that, right? We all know that something like this is going to happen. So we'll give you an update next Friday, though. So with that, have a great weekend, guys. Maybe don't even watch football this weekend, honestly. Maybe just skip out on it. Go to a party and just have some snacks. You don't have to watch the football game, right? The commercials are not even good anymore either, guys. The commercials also used to be super good. Now they all suck. Sorry to be such a Debbie Downer on football, guys. I grew up in an era when we had such great performances, and it was so great to go and watch football at this time of year because the commercials were great too, right? I would go and I would just watch the commercials, but the commercials were so good. And then, pretty much after we had about a 10-year period where the big game rocked, where the halftime shows rocked, and now they're just sucky. But with that, folks, I've been Nathan Hale. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you have stories you want me to cover, DM me on Twitter with them. Tweet at me. I hope you enjoyed this show. I appreciate every single one of you watching. Every week that goes by, we get more and more people watching. Share this show with friends. Let people know how great it is. If you missed the show and you're just joining now, you can always watch the show back on YouTube and Rumble. It's always up on there. You want to watch past shows and get a little taste of me, If you're missing me and you want to hear my glorious voice going into your ear holes, you can watch it anytime you want. These episodes will always be up. But with that, I've been Nathan Hale. We will see you again next Friday. Peace out.